Chapter 116. Suddenly dozens of magic runes along with magic circles appeared around the woman who was amazed. When the magic power filled them, an explosion was caused, making a wave of wind so great that it shook the trees and filled the sky. The Queen of Riser Phoenix was withdrawn. Graphia's voice arose, revealing Ubelina's defeat. Gilgamesh turned his gaze to Ravel, who was trembling. Ravel quickly raised her hands in a sign of surrender. I don't want to fight," Ravel said, stammering nervously. Gilgamesh approached her and put his hand on her head and rubbed it while laughing. Ravel's face turned all red. "I know you don't want to. Stay here, for if you don't you can get hurt," Gilgamesh said as he moved forward, leaving Ravel behind. "With the four great Satan." "That was impressive," said Sirafal with a visibly impressed look. "Really impressive. The spells he used were quite precise and needed a lot of control, even more to put them in the air and make them undetectable, and those weapons too, so that in the legendary treasures of Gilgamesh." "Impressive," said Ajoka, surprised and very curious about Gilgamesh's abilities. "Yes. We need to find a way to get him on our side, or at least not be an enemy," said Surtsks, turning to his friends, who agreed. Everyone joined in as they began to discuss a plan to get Gilgamesh to join their faction. With Gilgamesh in front of the Academy Kuah camp, a battle was taking place. Two figures were facing each other. One was Riser, staring at his opponent with an angry look, while Gilgamesh stared at him impassively. Suddenly, a giant flame exploded from Riser's back, transforming into a huge pair of wings. New quest. Title: A Roast Chicken. Description: Beat Riser Phoenix. Reward: 5,000 EXP, 100,000 gold, Tori Tori no Mi, Phoenix Model, Sunshine Magic, Snatch Magic. Gilgamesh smiled when he saw the mission and the rewards, then looked at Riser. "Are you ready?" asked Gilgamesh. "Are you ready?" Riser sneered, soaring into the sky. "I wield the power of the Phoenix. An insignificant mortal like you is not even worthy to be on the same stage as me." Before Gilgamesh could respond, Riser sent a storm of flames straight at the boy. As far as Ravel, who was watching, could tell, no conscious effort was made to avoid the attack. Gilgamesh just stood there and allowed the jets of flame to completely envelop his body. The force of the attack caused the entire forest beside the school to begin to burn, and Ravel could feel the intense heat from his position. Even if Gilgamesh managed to dodge, the raw heat of the fire should have melted his skin. Ravel bit her lip and turned away, not wanting to witness the horrible death of a human teenager. "Is this your fire?" Gilgamesh stood, engulfed in flames. The fire acted like an entity, coiling around him like snakes. Even as the fire surged up his arm, his skin was not burned. His entire body was immune to the famous Phoenix House fire. With a single blow from his arm, the flames dissipated. At this point, a panicked expression appeared on Riser's face and he tried to send another blast of fire at Gilgamesh, but this time, the fire stopped halfway. It condensed into an incredibly dense sphere of pure energy and floated towards Gilgamesh, where he plucked it out of the sky and put it in his mouth, swallowing it in one gulp and laughing. Now it wasn't just Riser who was freaking out. Every demon in the room who had a pair of eyes and could see what was happening had their jaws on the floor. "What?" Riser's surprise was quickly replaced by anger. "You dare to mock me?" In a burst of fire, Riser was propelled forward with insane speed and attempted to attack Gilgamesh. Just as he was about to make impact with the boy, a massive pop resounded across the battlefield and Riser's momentum was completely quashed. Ravel couldn't even catch the movement that occurred, but Gilgamesh managed to deliver some kind of blow that smashed Riser's face and sent him flying to the other side of the barrier, falling to the ground in a pitiful heap. His wings of flame were extinguished as his regenerative powers kicked in, but Gilgamesh didn't stop there. One moment he was on the other side of the battle arena, the next, Gilgamesh was right on top of Riser's body. With a strike to the shoulder blade, Gilgamesh pressed Riser's body against the ground while his free hand grabbed the devil's right arm. Almost like child's play, Gilgamesh completely ripped off the arm and hurled it toward the center of the arena, splashing blood everywhere. Ravel shouted at him to stop, but Gilgamesh didn't even hesitate. In a methodical way, Gilgamesh grabbed Riser by the neck and threw him onto the battlefield. The devil's battered body crashed into a mountain before falling to the ground. Gilgamesh looked at his clothes and apparently he noticed some kind of stain because he said, "Shit. I don't think I can take this off." "You." Riser staggered, already starting to grow back on his arm. "You son of a bitch. You piece of shit. How dare you dash? You have very strong regeneration," Gilgamesh said simply. "I think it's because of that fact that you can somehow fool yourself into believing you have a chance to beat me." Riser quickly had his hand regenerated and aimed at Gilgamesh, causing flames to appear and shoot at the King of Heroes. Gilgamesh raised his hand, making black flames appear that shot out against Riser's. The flames met and collided, but quickly Gilgamesh's black flames annihilated Riser's and continued advancing on the demon. Riser defended himself with his arm, causing the flames to engulf him. Facing the flames, Riser laughed. "You want to beat me with flames? Me, a phoenix, the one who commands flames and winds? That's ridiculous, shouts Riser with laughter. But as Riser was about to attack Gilgamesh, his eyes widened when he feels his skin burning. Looking at his arm he saw that it was burning. Ah, my arm, cries Riser as he falls to the ground with his arm burning. All the spectators were watching with wide eyes. Fire had burned a phoenix. What kind of fire was that? Gilgamesh, as everyone was startled. Don't compare my flames to yours. While your flames are the flames of hell, mine are the black flames of purgatory that possess the ability to burn anything up to an immortal, Gilgamesh said in a tone of explanation, making everyone's eyes widen. Don't worry, I will help you, said Gilgamesh with an evil smile. Beside him a golden ripple appeared and from it a weapon appeared. It is a special sword similar to a scythe, having the cutting edge on the inner side of the blade, although it is not a remarkable sword by itself. In an instant the sword shot out at an amazing speed and cut Riser's arm where the flames were. His arm fell to the ground and a second later was totally burned and incinerated by the flames. Riser's eyes widened. Where the blade had cut his arm was not regenerating. Where his right arm should have been, there was only a stump that stopped just above the elbow. Everyone in the room began to understand the event that had just occurred. Gilgamesh had somehow completely disabled the House of Phoenix's famous regeneration ability. Riser, who was beginning to realize this for himself, fell to his knees as he looked at the stump of his arm. He quickly looked back and saw the sword that had cut him disappearing into golden dust. What is that? Speaks Riser, perplexed. Your arm will never regenerate again, Phoenix, said Gilgamesh, getting Riser's attention. This is not just any weapon, it is Harp, the weapon that was given by the Greek god Hermes to the great hero Perseus to kill Medusa, a weapon with the ability to kill immortals, said Gilgamesh, making everyone's eyes widen. Immortal Scythe, Harp is a divine sword from Greek mythology used by Perseus to slay the Gorgon Medusa and one of the many weapons inside Gilgamesh's Babylon Gate. It is described as a sacred sword that kills monsters with a special scythe-like shape, having the cutting edge on the inner side of the blade, although it is not a remarkable sword in its own right. Its true strength is its longevity refraction trait, which is a divine ability that nullifies the eternal attribute of immortals and inflicts wounds that cannot be restored by any method other than healing according to natural laws. It is one of the 5 noble phantasms given to Perseus, the largest amount of legendary artifacts given to a single person in Greek history, for his mission to slay Medusa. It was given by Hermes, and as it was returned to him once the task was completed. What a shame! Gilgamesh looked at his own left hand. I thought you would really be a challenge. I thought the one who held the power of a mystical bird would be a bit stronger. But this fight was not even a little fun for me. The crowd watched with bated breath. Riser screamed and struggled, trying to activate any aspect of his demonic power, but nothing happened. Little did he know that Gilgamesh sealed his power temporarily with magic runes when he touched him. I didn't know what I was expecting, though. After all, Gilgamesh smiled savagely. What is a phoenix compared to a dragon? Slowly and deliberately, a crimson gauntlet manifested itself on his left arm. As if a dam had been broken, an unbearable pressure was released on the battlefield. Ravel closed her eyes in an attempt to resist the attack, but nothing she could do could relieve the pressure. But, worried about her brother, Ravel forced her eyes open again. At this point, the rhythmic beat that accompanied the battle had stopped completely. Then Ravel realized that there was a barrier between Gilgamesh and the crowd, being a barrier that was beyond the barrier dimensional of the rating game. Many of them, especially the weaker ones, reacted as Ravel did, but she failed to take into account that the barrier Graphia was holding was actively suppressing the vast majority of whatever was emanating from Gilgamesh's body. Even Xerxes seemed surprised by the blunt force attack. Inside the barrier, his brother felt the true strength of Gilgamesh's aura. Then, Gilgamesh sealed the fight with a single word, boost. Instantly, Graphia's barrier exploded. Any smaller devil instantly fell to its knees, flattened by the relentless force. Gilgamesh made no further effort to hide his aura, freely letting all the pent-up energy flow out of his body like a shockwave, almost sending Ravel and the other devils flying out of their seats. However, Riser remained rooted to the spot as if chained there, and Gilgamesh turned his now glowing red gaze to the devil. Gilgamesh moved closer to Riser, while Ravel stood apart protected by a Graphia barrier that made her to protect after Gilgamesh's power surge. Riser only stared in shock. Who are you? Questions Riser fearfully. Gilgamesh earned a gigantic smile on his face. Pay attention, bird, for I will only speak once. My name Gilgamesh. The king of Uruk, the proud son of Lugalbanda and Ninsun. And the most prominent king among kings. I am the slayer of Humbaba the terrible, the monstrous giant that the gods feared. I was the one who killed the bull of heaven when the petulant goddess Ishtar cast him upon my people for my rejection of her advances. I am the current Sekiruti, host of Drag, the dragon that the gods feared. I am the first worthy human being to be known as a legend, the first of all heroes, and no one who comes after me could even overshadow my glory. Declared Gilgamesh with all pride and power, making everyone, even if unconsciously, feel small and amazed. So tell me, little bird, what are you to me, asks Gilgamesh sarcastically, you are a worm, and like all worms you must stare at the ground as you die. The entire space around Gilgamesh crumbled into golden ripples that came out dozens of weapons. Swords, daggers, spears, halberds, arrows, axes and the most diverse weapons emerged with great beauty and grandeur. All of them were holy weapons or capable of killing immortals. Everyone, especially Riser, was terrified when they felt the power of the weapons. Xerxes tried to end the battle, but the rating game system was not working because the power that Gilgamesh had released had influenced the dimension. In an instant all of Gilgamesh's weapons shot towards Riser who closed his eyes awaiting his death. Stop! A shout interrupted and made the weapons stop in midair as in front of Riser, just inches from the weapons was someone. Ravel Phoenix was standing in front of Riser protectively as tears flowed from his eyes. "PP please don't kill him," Ravel said fearfully. "Aren't you afraid, Phoenix?" asked Gilgamesh as the weapons began to release more power. The girl trembled but held her position. "If it is for my brother," the girl said fearfully as she felt the power of the weapons. Gilgamesh gave a gentle smile and all the weapons dissipated into golden dust to Ravel's surprise. Gilgamesh approached and put his hand on Ravel's head making her blush. "Very brave you, Ravel Phoenix, many would not stand up to my treasures, be proud." Gilgamesh spoke in a tone that made the girl surprised. Gilgamesh turned his gaze to Riser who was still on the floor. "Learn this from today, worm, you are only alive because of your sister," said Gilgamesh as he turned and prepared to leave. Ravel went after Gilgamesh as she wanted to talk to him just so something would catch both of their attention. Riser stood up and stuck all his magic power he had into him creating flames that went all the way to the sky. "Even if I die I will kill you," shouts Riser as he prepares all his remaining power. The power was so great that it would hit both Gilgamesh and Ravel, but it seemed that Riser was not thinking straight and let his anger do the thinking for him. Gilgamesh before decided to show one of his techniques, after all Xerxes wanted him to demonstrate if unwavering power. Riser raised his magic power to the maximum by making his wings of flame emerge from his back, dozens of fireballs were created in the air with heat that made the atmosphere itself overheat, spears of fire were created around him and the earth itself was melting as Riser's power was raised to its maximum. Riser had totally lost his train of thought, he was letting his anger blind him and attacking everything, he had taken all of his power that was focused on his regeneration and now had focused it totally on his attack power. Gilgamesh looked slightly impressed before turning to Ravel who was cowering. "Don't stand in front of me, Ravel, for if you don't you might get hurt," Gilgamesh said to the girl who nodded. Gilgamesh stepped forward and looked at Riser before starting. In an instant his mark from the Ice Devil Slayer magic appeared on his arm, not that anyone could see because his clothes covered it. Gilgamesh let out his breath which came out in the form of steam due to the sudden drop in temperature. "Mana Zone," whispered Gilgamesh as he used his technique to gain control of all the magical power within the rating game barrier. The power of his Long Inu's Zenith Tempest skyrocketed as Gilgamesh pulled all the power he could access with the exception of his balance breaker. Only one sentence was heard before the world froze. "Absolute zero." With Xerxes and the spectators. All the spectators were watching anxiously to see what technique Gilgamesh would use after his sudden increase in power. But just as Gilgamesh was about to use his power, a wave of snow and ice swept over everything, preventing them from seeing through the cameras of the rating game. Ajoka quickly got in front of his system and was trying to see if he could fix the problem so they could see or know what happened. But the popping sound caught everyone's attention. Looking at where the noise was coming from, they saw that ice was starting to create itself on the structures of the hall. Before they could do anything, the whole room was shaken, causing almost everyone to fly out. Xerxes together with Sirafal and Ajoka quickly made their way to where the guests were and saw that ice was forming around the hall and quickly used their devil power to create a barrier to protect them. "Lord Lucifer, look at this," said a random devil as he approached. He opened a portal and showing an image of the underworld. Much of the underworld was suffering from strange weather events. The underworld was large, the size of the earth without the sea, yet everything in a radius the size of a country like Japan was immersed in major weather disasters. Hurricanes were falling on the land, unprecedented snowfall, heavy hailstorms. Climate manipulation? Who could be doing that? Sana was always quick on the uptake, said as she approached next to Rias. That's the same magic power as Gilgamesh, Ajoka concluded, making everyone's eyes widen. Impossible for a single person on this scale, even a Satan cannot manipulate the weather from such a large radius of reach, not only that but be able to overcome the barrier of the rating game and affect much of the underworld. That has to be a multi-stage ritual. Xerxes concludes. Normally you would be right, but there is a spell that can do that, said Inkiju as he approached them. I've never heard of a spell that could alter the weather like that, said Ajoka curiously. It's called Absolute Zero, said Inkiju to everyone. How does it work? Asked Sirafal curious. Absolute Zero is the manipulation of heat energy at higher levels. Every amount of heat is negated. A center of Absolute Zero that causes even the flow of time to stop. An absolute protection of time. Any and all movement not authorized by Gil is forbidden. Ice magic is quite accelerated where even a novice level spell has the power of a master level. Master level spells are practically one-shot god killers, explains Inkiju as he turned his attention to the screen connecting the battle. An army killing technique, said Sirafal in surprise. Everyone turned their attention back to the screen and couldn't widen their eyes at what they saw. When the snow wave passed and it was possible to see what happened. The whole battlefield was immense in a great amount of ice where there was no part of it that was not immersed in ice and snow, even the air was freezing and the strength of the ice was exceeding even the rating game barrier. Everyone was absurdly surprised by this, being especially Grafia and Sirafal. Both were two masters in the use of ice magic, so much so that in the past their battle for the post of Leviathan had frozen much of the underworld. Sirafal even thought that this power of Gilgamesh was like her Celsius cross-trigger technique that converts the earth itself into a frozen wonderland. But she quickly dismissed that idea. This was much more than simply freezing. Sirafal was able to sense an oppressive amount of magical power concentrated in every piece of ice that Gilgamesh. Then Sirafal understood the real power of this magic. It was much more than simply creating a world of ice, to be able to freeze an entire city instantly and still be strong enough to overcome the barriers of the rating game and affect much of the underworld with weather disaster. It was a feat that all users of ice magic sought for their entire lives. Even Sirafal had already tried to achieve this but failed. It was ice beyond ice. It was a magic that recreated a frozen world with the power of Absolute Zero. Absolute Zero is the full potential of an ice-based magician. It is said to be an ice beyond ice and the fruit of the labor for which every ice-based magician strives, enabled through the zenith of cold manipulation achieved by understanding the essence of ice. Absolute Zero itself is recognized as being the lower limit of the thermodynamic temperature scale, a state in which the enthalpy and entropy of a cooled ideal gas reaches its minimum value. Even Sirafal with all her immense demonic power and extreme talent was not able to do it. None of her spells were able to reach this level, able to freeze any enemy? Yes, but not of reaching Absolute Zero. In the case of every ice-based magician, a feat like lowering the temperature to induce any form of ice-derived magic might seem like a fairly simple operation, but to completely circumvent the laws of thermodynamics in order to induce Absolute Zero is impossible by supernatural beings, or that's what Sirafal thought. The closest thing to that was Long Inu's absolute demise, who claimed to be able to achieve Absolute Zero, but no one has ever been able to do that. So to be able to see someone perform this technique right in front of him was something beyond impressive. It was like seeing a dream come true. It was so beautiful, whispered Sirafal as she saw the ice paradise created by Gilgamesh. Inside the battlefield was totally immersed in ice. Every tree, every water, every tiny bit of land was frozen to the point that not even sound could be heard. Even the atmosphere was frozen to the point that it was breaking through the barrier created by the rating game. The only things that weren't frozen were Gilgamesh, the one who conjured this technique, and Riser and Ravel Phoenix, although they were only free because Gilgamesh allowed it. Xerxes had asked for unshakable power, and so Gilgamesh decided to show him, and it was also a good way to test his technique. Absolute Zero. The name already says well what the technique is. Something far beyond freezing, a world that reaches the absolute zero of strong climatic events where Gilgamesh can deny everything, even space-time. A technique created by Gilgamesh based on Longinus balance breaker absolute demise, Assoluto Argento Mondo, that has the ability to create a strong snowstorm capable of swallowing an entire country. It is also based on Seraphal's signature technique Celsius Cross Trigger. A technique created by Gilgamesh mixing his Ice Devil Slayer magic along with his Long Inu's Zenith Tempest along with the Mana Zone. It was something far beyond freezing everything coming back. After all, Gilgamesh could easily freeze entire countries easily. It was a world created from absolute zero. Of course it is impossible to reach absolute zero. His Long Inu's Zenith Tempest is said to be capable of reaching that level, however Gilgamesh did not master it to that level. The Ice Devil Slayer magic is also capable of reaching that level, however only in Devil Force. His Absolute Zero is a technique that mixes others. First, your Ice Devil Slayer magic is used to use Glaciate. Glaciate is a powerful supplemental passive ability of Ice Devil Slayer magic and perhaps its greatest asset. Effectively, it allows the user of Ice Devil Slayer magic to turn anything they come into contact with into ice and then use that ice in any way they see fit, as long as the object of choice they touch is capable of turning into ice. Glaciate can be turned on and off according to the user's will, which means it fares a little better than most elemental conversion affinity type abilities. When inducing Glaciate, as the Ice Devil Slayer magic is constantly generating tiny amounts of semi-solid ice with every breath it takes, when the user comes into contact with anything that can be turned into ice, the temperature of the object it touches has its temperature immediately reduced to its freezing point, effectively causing a sheen of ice to glide over its very existence, from which the user is able to modify it in any way they see fit. It is not only solids that can be frozen, but Glaciate is able to freeze air itself. This freezing effect is capable of extending for several miles, and anything the resulting ice comes into contact with is also subjected to the effect of the glaciate itself. Using the glaciate, Gilgamesh puts everything into a frozen paradise. After this, Gilgamesh uses his mana zone to gain control of all the magical power of the entire range of the technique. Soon after this, he manipulates all the magical power within his range to create weather disasters, which Gilgamesh manipulates with his long Inu's Zenith Tempest in addition to manipulating every heat source. This is something beyond freezing, as he manipulates every piece of ice in his range. Using all this, Gilgamesh reaches absolute zero. In fact, although theoretically impossible to achieve naturally, the dream of reaching absolute zero is able to become a reality through the application of the fighting spirit or by the enchantment in conjunction with ice-derived spells, allowing the user's willpower to break the limits of the temperatures that ice generated by a supernatural force can reach, bringing this miraculous power to the mortal plane. Once the user's ice reaches absolute zero, at such extreme temperatures, events that do not normally occur in nature begin to happen, such as ruptures on the atomic level, as everything frozen by absolute zero shatters with the slightest breeze flowing towards it, and superconductivity. It is well known that when under the effects of absolute zero, the world is enveloped in silence as all material things stop moving, all placed in absolute stillness. In addition, Gilgamesh is able to use an ability called Hishoku or ice erosion. With the ice he manifests, inducing the breaking of anything he comes in contact with in a manner not unlike crash, itself a power that gives the user the ability to break everything they come in contact with into countless pieces through a pressurization of magical energies. This, with some help from Gilgamesh's magical energies, causes anything his ice-created attacks come in contact with to have their atomic structure lose its flexibility, resulting in the target shattering where they stand, granting each of Gilgamesh's blows possessing a certain transcendent priority, exhibiting the ability to transcend the normal area of effect of close combat attacks, since his Ice Devil Slayer magic cannot collide with, block, cancel, or be cancelled by other attacks, even other priority-oriented attacks of a similar nature. When absolute zero is invoked, it results in completely impossible to block blows that are certain death in the first place, with the only way to escape its properties of a death blow being to evade. This was Gilgamesh's absolute zero, a world of ice where he could kill gods. An ability that could be called all-powerful. Although such power, it had several weaknesses and limitations. The first was that Gilgamesh could not maintain it for very long, because even for him it was difficult to control all this power and the range. But beings from the top 10 would be able to fight against Gilgamesh in this world because the power would be able to neutralize a little the effects of the technique. The only ones that Gilgamesh knew he couldn't win with this technique alone would be Great Red, Off-Ice, Trihexa, Shiva, Indra, and beings from the Celestial Dragon class. Apart from these beings, no one would be able to defeat Gilgamesh in this world, a world where Gilgamesh could defeat entire armies. This was absolute zero. Gilgamesh walked across the battlefield towards Riser without making a sound as he let out his breath in the form of mist. He was only able to survive the effects of absolute zero due to his Ice Devil Slayer magic. Gilgamesh frowned as he saw that his technique was destroying the barrier of the raiding game. Gilgamesh knew that this could occur, he must finish this as soon as possible. Gilgamesh looked at Riser, who was still releasing his magic power and flames. That's because Gilgamesh allowed Riser to release his power. Gilgamesh could just freeze him. Riser, although he was afraid of the power released, he was angrier. How could a human have more power than him? Unacceptable. Something in Riser seemed to snap and he began to attack with a fierce scream. He rained down attacks on Gilgamesh from above as if it were Judgment Day. Great waves of fire were conjured as if they were hot air. Dozens of fire spears were launched at the same time, and fireballs, hot enough to melt rocks, flew through the sky. Gilgamesh simply looked at the flames that stopped in mid-air. A zoneless sphere of energy came and seemed to protect Gilgamesh. The flames hanging in the air seemed to have stopped, as space-time itself prohibited further movement. In a single instant, all the magic power unleashed by Riser was frozen in the air. They were all immersed in blocks of ice while standing still in the air. A single glance from Gilgamesh was enough to make them break. Gilgamesh began to approach Riser and the ice got stronger and stronger with each step. Riser stopped when he could no longer muster his power and an unbearable pain surged through his body. With each step Gilgamesh took getting bigger and bigger. Gilgamesh's very presence was freezing Riser with every step he took. Slowly every particle of water inside Riser's body began to freeze, his blood vessels began to freeze as his blood froze inside his own body, his organ, tissues, and muscles began to go into cryogenics. How much? I can feel that you are a human. How do you have this power? Cried Riser in anger. You devils and your dislike of humanity, commented Gilgamesh with amusement. Tell me, what's so great about you devils? Riser tried to summon his power to finish off Gilgamesh, but nothing was working. Riser's eyes widened as he felt every muscle and part of his body freeze even more. No answer? Then I'll tell you. You are no different from any human. You have some fancy abilities, but deep down, you are no different. Gilgamesh stood in front of Riser, who was wide-eyed as he felt his body crystallize. Gilgamesh raised his right hand which gained a mist coming out of it due to the low temperature. You, Riser Phoenix, are no better than a cowardly human. You tyrannize those who are weaker, but look at you when you are faced with someone you cannot defeat. Gilgamesh placed his hand close to the face of Riser who was fear visible in his eyes. So I will make sure you never do that again, Gilgamesh said as he touched his hand to Riser's head. At that moment a strong amount of ice appeared trapping Riser in a giant block of ice. Ani-I-sama cried Ravel as he approached. Gilgamesh sighed as he deactivated his Absolute Zero ability causing the entire earth to return to normal and the weather disasters to stop, although Riser was still trapped in a block of ice. Gilgamesh turned his gaze to Ravel. Don't worry, he's just frozen, he'll survive, Gilgamesh said, although he hid the fact that some damage was permanent. Ravel nodded to him. I think that's enough, right Surtsks, spoke Gilgamesh aloud. Surtsks quickly agreed as they managed to get the rating game system working. Riser Phoenix retires, the winner is Gilgamesh, declared Graphia's voice. A screen appeared in front of Gilgamesh. Quest concluded. Title, A Roast Chicken. Description, Beat Riser Phoenix. Reward, 5,000 EXP, 100,000 gold, Tori no Mi, Phoenix Model, Sunshine Magic, Snatch Magic. You won 5,000 EXP. You won 100,000 gold. You won Tori no Mi, Phoenix Model. You have won Sunshine Magic. You have won Snatch Magic. You leveled up. Congratulations Gilgamesh, you have reached level 100. Some time later. Gilgamesh was currently following Tiamat wordlessly, after his victory against Riser and his nobility. Tiamat claimed that 3 of the 4 Satanists wished to speak with him. When he asked what they wanted, Tiamat said that he honestly did not know. Gilgamesh could tell that Tiamat was being honest, but she seemed a little happy with the way he treated the nobility of that spoiled brat. After the battle Gilgamesh had met with Tiamat who told them to go find the Devil Kings, and honestly it was helpful. After all Gilgamesh didn't want any devil nobles trying to put him in their nobility. Gilgamesh also told his friends to wait for him outside. Gilgamesh also knew that from now on his life would no longer be peaceful, for now all the supernatural beings in the world would know of his existence and be after him. Well, he never really had a normal life. Power attracts power, after all. Gilgamesh-kun? Is everything okay? Have you been awfully quiet? Tiamat asked softly. Although she absolutely despised Drake, she really enjoyed Gilgamesh's company, especially the warmth his body provided at night. How she could break into his room and lie next to him without him noticing was something even Gilgamesh didn't know how. It's nothing Tiamat, I'm just thinking about life a bit, Gilgamesh said softly to her. Gilgamesh also noticed that several of the maids they were passing by were giving him a look of pure fear or lust. It was starting to get on his nerves. I mean, they were evil beings based on sin and all kinds of negative emotions. One would think that they would be worshipping him like a god, instead of shunning him for his brutal battle tactics. What will you do about the Devil King's offer, Gilgamesh-kun? Asked Tiamat curiously. I will analyze Tiamat, I really have always been a free spirit and that no one can control, it all depends on what they say, explained Gilgamesh to her. Tiamat sighed. Just be careful what you decide. Regardless, I will still be your familiar anyway, said Tiamat smiling. I will be careful. But know this, Tiamat, whatever happens to me, it won't change anything between you and me. You are one of my only friends I ever had, and that is something I don't want to lose, Gilgamesh said before leaning forward, and Gilgamesh gave Tiamat a small kiss on the forehead. This action caused Tiamat to recoil in shock and surprise as she could only look at Gilgamesh with a look of astonishment. Her cheeks were beginning to heat up while a small blush was present on her skin. She gave a playful look to Gilgamesh, who simply smiled back at her. He was enjoying this and she knew it, and worst of all, she didn't know if it was a genuine kiss or if he was just toying with her. With Surtsks, Sirafal, and Ajuka. Surtsks along with Sirafal and Ajuka were waiting patiently in Surtsks' office. They were waiting for Tiamat to bring Gilgamesh here so that they could discuss their plans for him. And they were confident that the plan to turn him into an allied member of their faction would never backfire on them. Unfortunately, they didn't know Gilgamesh as well as they thought they did. Where is Tiamat? Should she be here with Gilchan by now? Seraphal's childish voice broke the silence in the room. As Surtsks laughed while Ajuka rolled her eyes, at Gilgamesh's new pet name. Yes, Sirafal would be the first to die, at the hands of Gilgamesh. I don't think he will like that nickname Sirafal. He doesn't seem like the kind of person who lets others give him nicknames like that. Ajuka muttered softly as she played with her tablet-like device. Aju-chan. Don't be like that, I'm sure he'll love it. Sirafal whined comically while the more serious Satan rolled his eyes. Surtsks simply laughed softly. However, a knock on the door caught the attention of the 3 Satans occupying the room. Come in. Gilgamesh and Tiamat entered the room. Tiamat glanced nervously at Ajuka, who gave her a nod of acknowledgement before returning to playing on her tablet. Xerxes gave Gilgamesh and Tiamat a kind smile as she gestured for them to sit down, which they both did. Greetings Gil-chan, I am Sirafal Leviathan, I am glad you accepted our invitation. But you can call me Leviathan. Sirafal exclaimed in pure joy. Tiamat cringed at the volume at which Sirafal was speaking. Gilgamesh simply raised an eyebrow at that. Nice to meet you Sirafal, Gilgamesh said with a smile that made Sirafal blush. Xerxes laughed a little, making Sirafal pout and sit down again. Gilgamesh turned his gaze to Xerxes. I believe you had something you would like to discuss with me, Xerxes-san said Gilgamesh to Xerxes, who nodded. First of all, thank you for helping my sister, I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, Xerxes said smiling. Gilgamesh nodded, and realized that Ajoka and Sirafal didn't seem to be surprised by this news, so it's likely that they already knew this. So I would like to know what are the 3 requests you want, asked Xerxes with everyone turning their attention to Gilgamesh. I would like you to release the Bishop of Rias, Gaspar Vilady, for me to talk to him, said Gilgamesh. Everyone quickly turned their attention to this. Do you mind if I ask why that is, asked Xerxes with everyone's curiosity. You know Valerie right, spoke Gilgamesh to Xerxes, who nodded. She is a Dumper and Gaspar's older sister, and one of the reasons we moved to Kuah was so she could reunite with him, said Gilgamesh to the great surprise of all. Xerxes actually knew that his sister's bishop had an older sister but didn't imagine that she would be with Gilgamesh. Although it is an important request, I really can't do it, Xerxes said nervously. Gilgamesh frowned his eyes. Why? Asked Gilgamesh dangerously. The Bishop of Rias can't control his power and that's why he was sealed, Xerxes explains. And why didn't you teach him to control it? He has been with you for years, Gilgamesh said to Xerxes. Ajoka snorted at this. That's what I said, but Xerxes found it too dangerous for his dear sister. He could be of great help in the battle against Riser, said Ajoka to Xerxes, who laughed with embarrassment. Sorry about that, Gilgamesh-kun, but Gaspar will be released in a few weeks, then he can be reunited with his sister. That won't count as a request, says Xerxes to Gilgamesh, who nods. Gilgamesh, though a little sad for Valerie, understood. So is there anything else you want? Asks Xerxes. No, there is nothing else for now. Now why did you guys want me to come here? After all, I doubt that's all it's for, Gilgamesh said to them. I would like to offer you something, Xerxes said to Gilgamesh, who frowned his eyes. I hope you are not talking about entering your nobility, says Gilgamesh to them. Surprisingly, Xerxes shake his head negatively. I wanted that before, but now I know you won't accept that. And that would also be like mocking you. After all, you are the descendant of the King of Heroes and the current Sekiryu-Ati, you wouldn't bow down to anyone like that, Xerxes said seriously. This was true. Xerxes knew that Gilgamesh would never do something like this. His brief encounters with him showed him that. And also Xerxes doubted that there was any devil capable of reincarnating Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh had fully mastered the power of the heavenly dragon of domination, Drag, and that already put him in a class of his own. And Xerxes also felt the power of Gilgamesh when he looked into Gilgamesh's eyes. Xerxes felt the power of the King of Heroes. When Xerxes looked at him, he felt the magical power of Gilgamesh. It was like looking into a gigantic abyss that swallowed everything in front of him. It was surely one of the most terrifying experiences of his life. And because of this, Xerxes knew that it would not be possible to reincarnate him as a devil. Only a piece of mutant queen could reincarnate him, but even Sirafal and Falbium didn't have the power to do that. So that left only him and Ajoka, but both of them already had their queen pieces, Xerxes being his wife Graphia, and Ajoka's being Falak, the snake king of the realm of the dead. And so because of that, Xerxes had to resort to another option. And because of that, we are pleased to offer you to be one of the magicians who make contract with us, Xerxes said to Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh raised an eyebrow in doubt. Contract magician? Asked Gilgamesh. Before you continue, let me ask, did you know how magician and devils work? Not really. I just knew that they were supposed to be partners or things like that, but that's it. Gilgamesh replied. You got it right, that's what most people knew, but the nature of the contract that magicians make is not something so basic, Xerxes corrected. Instead, the nature of the contract is meant to help the magician and devil deepen their knowledge of magic. Additional knowledge? You mean founding a new branch of magic or something? Gilgamesh asked, and Xerxes nodded. Yes, you could say such a thing, yes. Xerxes confirmed. As you knew, mages use calculations and formulas to use their power and create spells. As you can see, Gilgamesh-kun, instead of magic, which depends on formulas and calculations, demonic power like us. Instead, it depends on imagination. Demonic power can be shaped in almost any way, depending on the devil's own skill, but the price of using it is much higher than magic, Xerxes explained to him. So it's like going from point A to point C without stopping at point B along the way. Gilgamesh asked, and Xerxes nodded again. Exactly, the Mu confirmed. There are 3 basic reasons that magicians contract with devils. Protection, to acquire items or techniques from the underworld, and for status. In the instant Gilgamesh heard that, his mind quickly understood what Xerxes offered him, and Xerxes got a glimpse of it through his eyes. Yes, Gilgamesh-kun. I have not asked you to be my pariat or servant, no. Such a thing will be a mockery to you, Xerxes said firmly. I offer you to stand by me, stand by Amu. I offer you wealth, treasure, and respect. The moment you become an magician who makes contract with us, you will see yourself as someone equal to the Mu himself, equal to one of us, surpassing even Mai and the Sirafal sisters here. The offer Xerxes made him was actually caught as a guard by Gilgamesh. Inside he was really shocked. This offer was almost like asking to be a ruler of the underworld, someone like Xerxes himself. For any mage it would be like a blessing from heaven. Or hell, perhaps, seeing that it was Lucifer himself who gave the offer. And more about Lucifer not asking him to be his subordinate, but to be someone just like him. Someone who stands beside him and working together as equals. He was offered a kingdom here. That's pretty amazing, said Gilgamesh. This was certainly something he hadn't imagined. I would imagine, but you are free to choose the one you wish to partner with. It could be me, Ajoka Belzebub, Falbium Asmodeus, or Sirafal here, he said as he gestured to Sirafal, who smiled at her name mentioned. Gilkun. Choose me. Pick me. Sirafal fidgeting in her chair while raising a hand like children in school who knew the answer to the test. Together we will create a better world, a magical girl and a hero, together with our ice magic. She stated as she smiled happily. Sirafal really wanted to know the origin of Gilgamesh's ice magic. It would be absolutely amazing for her. Sounds quite the offer. Gilgamesh began his search, smiling, believing he may have sealed the deal with Gilgamesh. However, I feel there is a but in here somewhere, Gilgamesh said as Xerxes frowned. Ah, a thinker and not just a stupid brute. That's a nice change of pace. Yes, what Xerxes forgot to say is that you have to answer us. It's not a big deal, just when we have a mission for you or if you need to go somewhere, you can always inform Tiamat instead of going down to the underworld. Since she is a relative and works for me, Ajoka explained calmly. Gilgamesh considered for a few moments. It is a good offer, however I refuse, Gilgamesh said to them who stared at him seriously. It's not like I'm rude or anything, but one thing you should know, I'm not on anyone's side, I'm on my side, Gilgamesh said as he stared at Mu firmly. I didn't mean to be rude, but there is a time in the future when we might become enemies. I serve no one because I follow the path I have formed for myself, Gilgamesh said to them. They all became serious and silent. Then allow me to ask you something. Are you an enemy of the underworld? Asked Ajoka seriously. I am not your enemy, nor do I have any interest in that. I was irritated by what Rias tried to do to me. But if you don't do anything against me I won't either, said Gilgamesh calmly. Very well then, I knew that the look you threw me means you are serious. I will respect your decision and not pressure you. Xerxes told him nonchalantly. Honestly, he never expected Gilgamesh to accept that in the first place, so he was not surprised. However, I knew that if you change your mind you can talk to us. He told him and Gilgamesh nodded. Well, I guess at the end of our meeting, do you have any questions or anything for me? I have nothing, said Gilgamesh before standing up and waving for Tiamat to follow him. Gilgamesh turned on his back and activated his Rin-Egan and used his space-temporal portal ability to warp reality and create a portal right there to everyone's perplexity. See you later, said Gilgamesh before entering the portal and disappearing. All the Devil Kings stood looking at the place where the portal was. A space-time technique? Impressive, said Ajoka in surprise. Too bad he didn't accept it, said Sirafal sadly. Don't worry, you can meet him later, Sirafal, after all you have a crush on him, said Ajoka as he teased her. Sirafal shot her gaze at him with a flushed face. I don't have a crush on him, Sirafal said quickly. It's not like he was a master at ice magic and was still extremely handsome and attractive. It certainly wasn't about that. Xerxes only laughed at their discussion. The world looked like it was going to change. And Xerxes was very eager to see it. Grigori, Underworld. Grigori is an organization created by Azazel and the fallen Qadr angels who fell from the grace of God of the Bible in heaven after giving in to their impure thoughts. Azazel was sitting in his chair in his office at Grigori while looking at a television set that was there. On this television set was playing the Battle of Gilgamesh against Rise Phoenix. How did Azazel manage to see this fight? Well, let's just say that a devil's greed surpasses even their loyalty. A little money is enough to make them change sides. When Azazel found out that Xerxes' sister had lost the battle, Azazel knew that the Crimson Devil King would do something to get his sister out of the marriage, and his bet was on Gilgamesh, and it seemed that he had got it right. Azazel can't help but feel extremely surprised by the power shown by Gilgamesh. He is certainly extremely powerful even without the boosted gear. Looking ahead, Azazel saw a handsome young man with light silver hair and brown eyes. He is wearing a dark green v-neck shirt and a black leather turtleneck jacket over it. He is also wearing burgundy jeans with a silver chain falling over them and black leather gaiters with 3 stripes around his right calf, and black shoes with black buckles. Was Vala Lucifer a remnant descendant of the original Lucifer and the bearer of long Enus, divine dividing, being the possessor of the vanishing dragon, Albion. As such, he is the direct rival of Gilgamesh and Drake. So what do you think of your rival Vali? Asks Azazel to his adopted son. The descendant of the original Lucifer smiled. Very impressive, I could expect no less from my rival, don't you think Albion? Asks Vala loudly with a proud smile. From Vala's back appeared a pair of white dragon wings on his back, with 8 energy feathers. Yes Vali. Drake sure has found an impressive host, said a voice that came out of the wings of light. It was Albion, one of the 2 heavenly dragons and Drake's arch-rival. He is called the White Dragon, also known as the Vanishing Dragon, Albion Gwyber, White Dragon Emperor and White Dragon Emperor of Supremacy. He is currently residing within the Long Inus, Divine Dividing, wielded by Vala Lucifer. I am really surprised that you are not going there now to fight him, said Azazel in a joking tone. I do not wish to fight him now. Maybe a little fight, yes. But to fight to the death? No, I don't wish to, not yet, said Vala with a smile. Oh. Azazel raised an eyebrow. Would you mind sharing? I don't want to fight someone who is not in his full power right now, Vala replied, shrugging her shoulders. We are both still young, we still have plenty of time. Add the fact that the 2 of us are the only users of the heavenly dragons who are not influenced by their hatred, since you told me that too. No. When we fight, it would be glorious. It would be a fight that would make the world remember the power of the heavenly dragon once again. A fight that would bring the full form of our sacred gear. A fight that would be marked in history to be remembered forever. Now, I'm not going to fight him. Not yet, we both are not ready. But maybe in the future. Sooner or later, we will be. Vala finished with a mischievous smile of joy. Azazel could only stare at that, a little surprised. His adopted son seemed to be very happy to find out who his rival is. That was a good change. Azazel would hardly wait to see how all this will unfold. Unknown location. In an unknown location that was a large ruin, there were 6 people standing with a screen in front of them. On this screen was playing a recording of Gilgamesh's battle against Riser. So what do you guys think? Asked a handsome young man with short black hair and blue eyes. He wears a combination of Japanese school uniform, more specifically, the gikurin worn by Japanese students in the fall, and ancient Chinese attire. While holding a spear in his hand. He sure is worth it, we should recruit him, said another young man with black hair and glasses. He wears a combination of Japanese school uniform, more specifically, the gikurin is worn by Japanese students in the fall, and wears a mage-style tunic over his uniform with a feather cape. I bet it would be really good a battle against him, after all he is the descendant of the King of Heroes, said smiling a man of 2 meters tall, well-built body and grey hair at shoulder height. He wears what appears to be a Japanese school uniform, more specifically, the gikurin uniform usually worn by Japanese students in the fall, covered by what could be Greek-inspired armor. You've known him the longest, what do you think? Asks the young man with the spear. He'll take it, he loves humans as much as we do, it will be amazing to fight alongside him again, says with a nostalgic smile a handsome young man with silver white hair and red eyes. He wears a gikurin and over it a priest's coat. He also wore a belt that held his 6 swords that went around his waist and legs, forming a sword skirt. The young man with the spear turned to the only woman in the group. She is beautiful young foreign woman with blonde hair and sky blue eyes. She wears a gikurin girl, with armor on top of her. I don't know if he will agree, but it would be amazing to be by his side again, said the young woman with a fond smile at the image of the golden-haired man. The white-haired, red-eyed man rolled his eyes. Of course, because you love him, said the man sarcastically to the girl, earning a blush on his face as he looked away. Everyone laughed a little. Order people, let's do all our business and then we will recruit a powerful ally, said the man with the spear. Yes, CAO, everyone says to their leader. The man with the spear is CAO, the leader of the hero faction of the Cows Brigade. He is the bearer of the ultimate Long Inus, the true Long Inus. He is also a descendant of CAO from the era of the 3 kingdoms. CAO smiled at that. Soon they would have a powerful ally to fight the supernatural beings. And at last human beings would prevail. Another unknown location. In an unknown place, above the heavens was a gigantic palace. This palace was made entirely of gold with many jewels adorning it. It was a divine palace that emanated energy from the gods. In the center of it was a throne made entirely of gold, worthy of a king, and sitting on the throne was a being. It was difficult to define its appearance as it was not human, and resembled a jackal. The temple doors were blown open by a wave of divine energy, causing the being sitting on the throne to sigh. Then the one responsible for the destruction of the door approached the man sitting on the throne. She was a woman with black hair and red eyes, her long black hair tied up in 2 tails with 2 black ribbons. On top of her head is a black and gold tiara, along with a gold neckband and matching O-shaped earrings. Her clothes are very revealing, with her top being a white bra with a gold outline that exposes some of her cleavage along with her lower back and belly. On her buttocks is a jeweled black gold thong that tucks deeply between her buttocks and exposes a large part of her buttocks and legs. She also wears a black stocking on her right leg with gold trimmings, and her left ankle has a gold bracelet. Her left arm is equipped with a black and gold glove that covers her forearm, while her left arm has a gold bracelet around the arm. Then why did you call me here, father? I was busy, said the woman who by her aura was a goddess. I have a mission for you, said the being in front of me. A mission? Why do I have to do that? Ask someone else, said the god as he turned and prepared to withdraw. A descendant of the king of Uruk, Gilgamesh, has emerged, said the being to the woman who stopped. A descendant of the Golden One has arisen, cries the woman in disbelief. Yes. And so I want you to go and convince him to join our faction, said the man. The woman was about to complain, but he spoke first. I will give you all the jewels you want if you complete the job. The woman paused for a moment. Not only would she get all the jewelry she wanted, but she would also get revenge on the descendant of the man who had scorned her. It was perfect. Very well, father, you have a deal, said the woman. And take your sister too, said the being, making the woman stared at him in disbelief. Why? I am more than enough, she said shouted angrily. He is not only the descendant of Gilgamesh, but also the Sekiruti, said the being to the woman who stared at him incredulously. That is an order, Ishtar, said the being, revealing the true name of the goddess. Ishtar is the goddess of beauty, good crops, war, lust, discord, and fertility in Mesopotamian/Sumerian/Babylonian mythology, and one among many mother goddesses whose power is derived from Mother Earth. She is said to be the most spoiled, or rather, the most loved goddess by the other deities. Her Sumerian divine name was said to be Inanna, and this name is actually her oldest name. Ishtar is her Akkadian divine name. It means the Lady of Heaven. A goddess of Venus, a goddess who rules over good crops that brings prosperity to the people, and even a goddess who rules over war and destruction. She is a great goddess who among the goddesses was gifted with many rights and authorities from the gods. The goddess who in the past fell in love with Gilgamesh, but was rejected and then released the strongest divine beast, the Bull of Heaven, to destroy the king of Uruk. The one primarily responsible for Enkidu's death. All right, king of the Sumerian gods Anu, said Ishtar to her father. Anu is Ishtar's father. Anu is the divine personification of heaven, supreme god, and ancestor of all deities in ancient Mesopotamian religion. Anu was considered the supreme source of all authority for the other gods and for all mortal rulers, and he is described in one text as the one who contains the whole universe. Ishtar turned and left while she had a wicked smile on her face. She would make the descendant of the man who despised her kneel before her and beg to serve her. After all, it is as that saying goes, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. With Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was walking through the halls, along with his friends who were about to go home. Valerie seemed a little sad that she could not see her brother Gaspar yet, but Gilgamesh assured her that he would make this meeting as soon as possible. Everyone was walking calmly, although Mordred was sad and angry that he hadn't fought. Enkidu moved forward a little and spoke to Gilgamesh. Are you sure that was the right decision? Asks Enkidu. Now with this announcement from Gilgamesh, the whole supernatural world will know about him and will come from behind Gilgamesh to recruit him. Enkidu wouldn't be surprised if they already had people planning about it. Don't worry Enkidu, everything will work out, Gilgamesh said to Enkidu, who frowned. Are you sure? Asked Enkidu, still afraid. Don't worry Enkidu, and any being that comes to challenge us we will simply chase them away, Gilgamesh said to them. Enkidu sighed as he nodded. Just be careful Gil, said Enkidu to Gilgamesh, who nodded. Don't worry my friend, everything will fall into place, said Gilgamesh smiling. The world is undergoing many changes. And Gilgamesh would participate in many of them. A few days later. Gilgamesh's house. It had been several days since Gilgamesh's battle with Riser and his revelation to the supernatural world. The supernatural world was totally shocked that there was a descendant of the King of Heroes and possessed a long Enus that is inhabited by a celestial dragon. The supernatural world was basically making a race to get Gilgamesh as an ally, and the fact that he wasn't anyone's ally only increased their chances. A demon had already appeared in Gilgamesh's house and arrogantly tried to put him in his nobility, but obviously he was defeated. And Xerxes the other day had received a great warning that this should not happen, and as proof Gilgamesh sent the demon's body chopped up in a box. Actually in Gilgamesh's house, more specifically in his room, there were, surprisingly, 3 people. In the center was a man with a perfect body who had golden blonde hair and crimson eyes, an aura that radiated power and majesty. It was Gilgamesh, the King of Heroes and the present Sekiruti. On her left side was a woman with long blonde hair as well as red eyes. She had a shapely body and a supernatural beauty. She was Valerie Teeps, the hostess of the Long Inu Sephiroth Grail. The reason for being there was that Gilgamesh and Valerie had always, or at least most of the time, slept together since their first night. Already at Gilgamesh's right side was a young woman. She has the appearance of a beautiful woman with long straight hair of a light blue color, dark blue eyes and a cold atmosphere that radiates from her beauty. It was Tiamat in her human form. Somehow Tiamat always enters Gilgamesh's room at night and puts his head on her breasts. How could she do this? Nobody knew. Gilgamesh opened his eyes a little and got used to the brightness of the sun. His body was a little sore from the training last night. Looking over he saw Valerie stirring and almost waking up. He smiled a little at this. Looking over he saw Tiamat lying on his chest and sighed. How does this woman manage to invade his room without him noticing? Not that he is complaining, the feel of her body is great, but it goes all his self-control not to take her right there. Good morning Gil, spoke Valerie, making Gilgamesh turn his attention back to her. Smiling he gave her a small kiss, who smiled. Good morning, she said, smiling. Before he could even say anything, the door to the room was kicked in by who turned out to be Mordred. The moment Mordred laid his eyes on Gilgamesh, Valerie and Tiamat were lying naked. Mordred's eyes widened at seeing this and she blushed. "SSSU perverts," shouts Mordred as she summons Clarent. Clarent gets an electric glow causing Gilgamesh to widen his eyes. Mordred jumps with Clarent to cut them off, making Gilgamesh stare. Gilgamesh pushed Tiamat away as he caught Valerie in his arms and dodged the attack. Mordred cut the bed in half, but Tiamat was not hit. Mordred turned her gaze to Gilgamesh, who widened his eyes. Although Gilgamesh was wearing pants, you could still see his upper body, making Mordred blush. "Let's calm down, Mordred," Gilgamesh said to calm her down. However, it had the opposite effect. Mordred lifted Clarent, who got a flash of lightning. Before Mordred could even attack, Asia appeared in the doorway and her eyes widened. I want in on this too," shouts Asia, blushing before running and jumping on top of Gilgamesh and placing a hand of his on his chest. "If it's you it's okay," said Asia softly as she blushed. Gilgamesh widened his eyes before looking at Mordred, who was looking even more enraged. Before Mordred could do anything, Arturia entered the room. "You are taking your time, Gilgamesh." The words of Arturia died in their throats. Arturia, this is not what you are thinking," Gilgamesh said nervously. Arturia went to look at Gilgamesh's face, however her eyes swept over his body a bit and she blushed a bit before taking a deep breath and summoning Excalibur. "Die perverts," Arturia said as she pointed Excalibur at them. At that moment Tiamat stood up and saw what was happening. "Be quiet, I want to sleep," she said, making everyone turn their attention to her incredulously. A time later. Currently everyone was sitting at the table while they ate. Gilgamesh, Valerie, Mordred, Arturia were sitting at the table with blows to the head given to them by Sabas, who was annoyed by the mess they had made. Inkiju, Tiamat were laughing at them while Asia had an innocent smile. Fenrir was lying on the rug next to Regulus and Sabas was beside them putting the food on the table. Gilgamesh sighed as he was in a bad mood because of all the mess. Gilgamesh looked at a letter that was in front of him. It was sent by a member of his fan club. Gilgamesh was well known by one of his nicknames. The Golden Magician. The Golden Mage was a genius magician who developed many spells and solved many unanswered problems, thus gaining much admiration and even a fan club. They were one of the few people who knew his real identity and knew how to send him letters. He received a few and always made a habit of answering each one personally. He always thought the personal touch was very nice to do. He saw that there was one from a loyal fan, a girl named Ellie Fei, no last name. Gilgamesh had a slight impression of who this Ellie Fei was, but he would not jump to conclusions. She usually wrote 3 to 4 times a month, so on average once a week. He always found Ellie Fei's writing engaging. Gilgamesh looked at the letter Ellie Fei had written and read to himself. "Dear Gilgamesh-sama, I must first say that I am very pleased to hear that you have announced yourself in the supernatural world and the new magics you have created, and also very interested in your ice magic. I have also been inspired by your specific articles on various types of magic, and have been studying a lot. I would like to show you one day. If I may ask a question, what precise calculation did you make to be able to use reverse magic without damaging the body and destroying abilities? I have spoken to talented magicians and they are also in the dark. Thank you very much." From Ellie Fei. Gilgamesh looked at the letter and read it before he began to write his reply. Gilgamesh sighed after he feared to send the answer and returned to his thoughts about the previous days. It had been a few days since his battle with Riser and his announcement to the supernatural world. In those days Gilgamesh had spent most of his time training to be able to control the abilities he had gained as rewards from the mission. Name, Tori Tori no Mi, Phoenix Model. Type, Active. Level, 50/100. Rare, Super Rare. MP Cost, 0. Description, Tori Tori no Mi, Model, Phoenix is a mythical zoan that allows the user to transform into a hybrid or full phoenix at will. Abilities, the user acquires the ability to regenerate at an extreme level. He regenerates through the blue flames. It was revealed by Oda that the blue flames, called by him Blue Fire of Rebirth, are not like ordinary fire in that, neither burn things nor get hot, they are completely different from the flames of Mera Mera no Mi. It was also said by Oda that regeneration has a limit. In addition, the blue flames can also be used to treat other beings, although in a more limited way. It also grants increased physical abilities. The user is able to use this devil fruit in 3 ways, in its hybrid form, human-animal, in its full form, and only in its human form. Human form. In this form the user continues with his normal appearance, with only the ability to create blue flames that regenerate him. Hybrid form. In his hybrid form the user gains large wings of blue flames that appear in place of his arms. He has also been seen to be able to transform his legs. Full form. When he enters his full form the user becomes a phoenix. In this form he is virtually unreachable, instantly regenerating any wound. Gilgamesh noticed that usually the rewards he received always had something to do with the quest. For example, he beat Riser, a descendant of the Phoenix clan, and gained an ability to transform into one. Gilgamesh admits that he liked this ability, although not powerful flames for attack, it is still a useful power. Although Gilgamesh was wary of eating the Akuma no Mi since he already had one, but it worked out fine. Name, Sunshine. Type, Passive. Rarity, Mega Rare. Level, 56/100. MP Cost, 0. Description: Sunshine is a unique power possessed by the sin of lion pride, Escanor. It is later revealed that this power was originally one of 4 graces given by the Supreme Divinity to one of the 4 archangels, male. This power is described as being unlike any other ever seen. It is weakest at midnight and reaches its peak at noon. Its power increases and decreases depending on how close it is to noon. Abilities: the closer he gets to noon, the greater his power, and his body begins to radiate intense waves of light and heat capable of melting metal stones. This ability is connected to the sun, the source of all life. However, during the night the user's power drops dramatically. During midday, the user becomes the One, the invincible reincarnation of power. Gilgamesh admits that he was greatly amazed by this ability. It really was a powerful and uncontrollable ability. First of all, when Gilgamesh used this ability, he didn't gain muscle mass or increase in size, he only gained all the abilities that Escanor and Male were able to use. During the night, which is the point when his power gets smaller, Gilgamesh has his basic power, and when dawn starts his power gets an amplification. Gilgamesh admits that this power is incredible and he has a hard time controlling it, so usually when he wasn't using this ability Gilgamesh leaves it off. The King of Heroes had even bought the Rita axe through the system to help him. Name, Snatch. Level, 38/100. Type, Active. Rarity, Rare. MP Cost, varies. Description: Snatch is a power possessed by the Fox of Greed, Ban. Skill: Snatch is an ability that allows its possessor to steal physical objects and the abilities of other creatures, without making any real or direct contact. Snatching objects seems to have the effect of preventing the movement of the object, and also preventing the wielder from grabbing and pulling it. Such an ability can be used to disrupt the use of equipment during a battle. One disadvantage is that while weapons become unusable, techniques that do not require movement are not restricted. The user is also able to basically steal the physical capabilities of his opponents, including speed, endurance, and brute strength, and add them to his own, strengthening and weakening his opponents. The amount of strength the user can steal is limited, his body can only contain so much before it reaches its maximum capacity. Gilgamesh also admits that this ability is very useful, especially if Gilgamesh needs to steal his enemy's powers. But these were not all the abilities and rewards that Gilgamesh gained, either. Surprisingly, he had 2 secret quests. Secret Quest. Title: Climbing to the Top. Description: Reach level 100. Rewards: 1.000 EXP, 50.000 gold, 2 get spins of Sacred Gear Long Inus, Special Summoning Card. Well, first the system received an update and won a new option called Draw, which is basically a roulette that has several skills related to various universes. To draw you need a get spins, basically a token is worth a skill or random item. When Gilgamesh used one of his tokens, a roulette wheel appeared with the names of all the Long Inus. In the following order their names appeared: True Long Inus, Zenith Tempest, Annihilation Maker, Dimension Lost, Boosted Gear, Divine Dividing, Canis Lycaon, Regulus Nemia, Seraphirat Graal, Absolute Demise, Incinerate Anthem, Innovate Clear, and Telos Karma. On a draw wheel, and the Long Inus Zenith Tempest, Regulus Nemia, and Boosted Gear were out, because Gilgamesh already owned them. It was very simple, whichever roulette wheel fell on he would win that Long Inus. Gilgamesh wondered what would happen to the users of the Long Inus that fell for Gilgamesh. According to the system, if they fell on the Long Inus of someone who is important to the storyline, who has already done something important, they would have their sacred gear removed and awarded to Gilgamesh. But if it fell on someone who had done nothing important to the plot, that person would be erased from the existence of this world and the Long Inus would be transferred to Gilgamesh, so it would be as if Gilgamesh had been born with it. The system is fucked up, partner. Gilgamesh spun the roulette wheel, and when it was about to fall on True Long Inus it turned and fell on Telos Karma. Name: Telos Karma. Rarity: Super Rare. Type: Active. Description: Telos Karma, also known as Ultimate Karma, is a low-level Long Inus. In the past, there have been several sudden incidents and phenomena impossible to explain under normal circumstances by historians or researchers that caused a change in human history in places like Japan and Europe caused by this particular Longinus, earning him the name History Breaker. Abilities: Telos Karma has the ability to create and impose choices that are not possible by force. Telos Karma allows its user to manipulate chance. The control of chance, the relationship between cause and effect. They can determine exactly what action, cause, will result in a certain reaction, effect, allowing them to decide what, when and how something happens without having to specify the why something might happen, since the why is determined by causality itself, which is a process that is under the user's control. Basically, it is a power capable of ignoring the power of your enemies to obtain the desired results in each battle. In that when you enter combat you can control and alter the events that take place to get the desired result. Casualty manipulation is said to be one of the closest powers to omnipotence. Balance breaker, locked, secret conditions must be met. Honestly, one of the coolest Longinus in Gilgamesh's opinion. A good example is that the user could make the enemy stumble during battle, their weapons not be in good condition, and even make all the enemy's attacks dodge. Well, I will give an example of the power of this Longinus. The user can use the change of cause and effect to impale his enemy. Just like the demonic Gi-Balg spear. Ah, yes, here you begin to understand how dangerous this power is. Name your attack started the cause, a spear that strikes the enemy, and that gave the desired effect, pierce the heart to death. In a nutshell, with Telos Karma, the spear of ignored the distance, ignored the trained instincts of the enemy, the robustness of his body, the fragility that made up that ordinary spear, to pierce the heart of the enemy and kill him. This is because the cause and effect were already decided. Although it is an extremely powerful and useful ability, it has limits as well. And it is considered a Longinus level because it has no attack power. It can manipulate cause and effect to always hit the enemy, but if the user doesn't have enough strength to kill him it is useless. And with his second token Gilgamesh got another Longinus. Name: Innovate Clear. Rarity: Rare. Type: Active. Description: Innovate Clear, also known as the Miniature Garden of Innovation Green Tree, is a lower level Longinus. Abilities: Innovate Clear has the ability to create an ideal world in another dimension, with the added ability to create near-perfect imitations of living things and objects, just as the Annihilation Maker can. However, anything made within Innovate Clear's world can only exist in that world. Innovate Clear is basically an idealized version of Longinus Dimension Lost and Annihilation Maker. Balance Breaker, locked, secret conditions must be met. This Longinus is very similar to a reality marble. It allows its user to create an artificial universe where the user can create any being or object of their imagination. However, depending on the creation it will consume more magic power and stamina. A powerful ability, but the user cannot attack the real world, only bring his enemies into it. The coolest thing is that in the world created by Innovate Clear the Telos Karma decides its own fate. What was even cooler was that the possessor of these two Longinus were the same person. Mitsuya Kanzaki was the user of them, not the original user, but that he somehow got hold of these Longinus and is able to draw some of their power. He is called the man who represents God because the powers of these Longinus gave him the ability to personify a god. Even the gods feared Mitsuya because of the power of these Longinus, and he was an extremely powerful human, and now the two were with Gilgamesh. Mitsuya no longer exists. The King of Heroes had trained over the past few days with them and gained a good idea of their powers and abilities, but he was still far from the balance breaker. Gilgamesh had also completed one more secret mission. Title: The Emperor of the World has returned. Description: Introduce yourself to the entire supernatural world. Rewards: 1,400 EXP, 30,000 gold, Varethragna authorities, Silver Arm authority. Well, this really had been a quest that Gilgamesh had not expected, but it seems that he had gained divine authorities from the world of Campione. For those who don't know what an authority is, I will explain. Authorities are the divine powers, attributes, qualities and weapons of gods, heroes, demons, and monsters, which make them invincible to normal humans. Little is really known about the authorities, other than that they are the magic of the gods, far surpassing mortal magic, and are what gave them the right to rule. What is known is that the particular authorities of a god are shaped by the myths and legends that originated them and reflect the history of that god. Basically they are laws that give the gods power, and Gilgamesh got the authority from Varethragna, the Persian god of victory, and Nudha, a Celtic god. Thus Gilgamesh is a demigod able to call upon the powers of the gods. Name: Authorities of the god of victory Varethragna, or 10 incarnations. Level: Max. Rarity: Mega Rare. Type: Active. MP cost: Varies. Description: According to his legend, Varethragna is a god of victories with 10 incarnations. This power allows him to be an extremely versatile and powerful god in combat. He is also called the Invincible Warlord because of his power. Skills: Abilities are defined in 10 incarnations. I will put this information elsewhere as there is so much. Honestly, Gilgamesh really liked this ability, especially if his enemies were gods, although he doesn't think the original Gilgamesh would have liked him resorting to the power of the gods. Frankly, Gilgamesh loved this ability because he was a big fan of the Persian god of victory. And also from the looks of it, Varethragna exists in this world and would therefore be able to sense the power in Gilgamesh, although only the aura, the Varethragna of this world does not have these powers. So the system has changed it so that these authority belongs exclusively to Gilgamesh and Varethragna would not be able to track it. Name, Silver Arm Authority. Level, Max. Type, Active. Rarity, Super Rare. MP cost, varies. Description, this authority is that of the Tuatha god of Dananuadha, who grants you a silver arm that can transform any object from a sword on a toothpick into an invincible sword that can cut through anything, spells, ectoplasm, or an entire stone fort. Even a laser beam can be deflected with minimal effort. He is also able to increase the size and length of the sword, amplify the pain of the cut wound, and even cause it to release explosions on impact. Any wounds created by these blades do not heal easily, even for gods. Not only can his sword cut through anything, when he strikes it at something, it can spread its cutting power to destroy the surrounding area. His silver arm can release a mystical silver substance to coat the blade, increasing its size enormously. The blade coated in this mercury-like metal will not lose its cutting power when the user throws it at his enemy, acting like an invincible dart. This was surely one of the best skills Gilgamesh gained. He has become more OP than he already was. A skill that can turn even a wooden toothpick into an invincible sword, imagine if it were used with Durandal. Gilgamesh also decided to spend some of his accumulated money on another skill. Name, Unlimited Weapons Works. Level, Max. Rarity, Mega Rare. Type, Active. MP cost, varies. Description, this skill is an evolved version of the Unlimited Blade Works. It allows its user to copy any weapon the user sees. It not only reproduces its skills and techniques but also the entire history of the weapon as well as allowing the user to alter them. The biggest difference between these abilities is that the copied weapons are so powerful as the original that there is no difference between them. This skill also allows the user to create a reality marble where all these weapons are stored. This skill is basically an enhanced version of the Unlimited Blade Works, only the weapons created are just as strong as the original. I have even considered getting the Unlimited Blade Works, but I have my pride. I am the king of heroes, the man who was known for collecting all the original treasures of the world. It would kind of be against my character to get an ability that copies weapons, so I took one that creates weapons as powerful as the originals. Gilgamesh sighed as he didn't even realize he was immersed in thought. Gil, are you okay? Asks Enkidu looking at Gilgamesh. Yeah, I was just thinking for a bit, said Gilgamesh as he stood up. Gilgamesh looked at Mordred. Let's go, said Gilgamesh referring to the school, making Mordred get up while mumbling. Gilgamesh before leaving turned to everyone. Guys, after I get back we will summon one more servant, said Gilgamesh to everyone who nodded. Unknown location. With the sun shining down on them, two brothers were strolling through what appeared to be a field. One was a young man, with blonde hair tied up in a small braid and wearing a pair of glasses that almost hid his blue eyes, dressed in a business suit, and beside him, an elegant-looking sword. Leaking some kind of holy aura, he looked very handsome, and to demons and other dark creatures, he was a kind of nightmare. The other was a girl, who looked to be about 15 years old, blonde hair that went down to her shoulders and blue eyes, with a cute appeal to her. Wearing a school outfit that had a grey blazer with blue plaid details at the wrists and waist, over a plain white shirt and a black tie. In addition, she wore a normal school skirt, along with a blue cape that had stars all over it, and on the right side of the inner side of the cape, there was a symbol of a golden lion with a crown. This was the magic symbol of the golden magician, and then she wore a magician's hat that was also quite pointy. So Elifei, you sent your messages to Gilgamesh-sama, said the boy to Elifei. Yes, Unai-sama, and he sent me many interesting formulas, replied Elifei cheerfully to his brother named Arthur, who smiled. I wonder if I could fight Gilgamesh-sama. You would be okay with that, right Elifei? Asked Arthur. Fighting with Gilgamesh-sama? Be well, I have no objection. I'm sure Gilgamesh-sama would like to study his sacred sword. He likes many things, you know. He loves sacred gear, sacred and demonic swords, different kinds of magic. He even found a way to use reverse without damaging his body, you know. I would love to know the secrets. Gilgamesh-sama must be very smart to know how to do that, Elifei said cheerfully. Then Elifei pulled out a map. Are we getting close to the possible location of Excalibur ruler Unai-sama? Arthur absorbed what was said for a few moments, before inclining his neck. According to some contacts, it might be here. It's been lost for many years, so no one knows exactly, but I have some contacts. Anyway, let's go ahead. All right then, Unai-sama. Elifei cheerfully cheered and began to follow his older brother once again, while happily looking at the letter he received from Gilgamesh. Some time later. By now, after class, Gilgamesh was home with his friends. The class had been normal. He had even talked to Sana and Devil thanked him for helping Rias. Rias also thanked him, however she got the wrong idea that Gilgamesh saved her because he was in love with her. What an idiot. After a while of talking and a call to Surtsks, and Rias knew the truth and looked sad. Not that Gilgamesh cared. Gilgamesh and everyone was now sitting in the room. The reason for this was that Gilgamesh was going to summon another servant. Gilgamesh was only going to summon him because he had won the summoning card and he already had in his mind who to summon. A golden portal opened beside Gilgamesh and from it came a huge spear that is longer than Gilgamesh's height. The head itself is a meter long and possesses a size that makes it impossible for a human being to wield. He uses the sharp point and its great weight in heavy attacks. This spear is Vasaka Shakti, O son, abide in death. It was the spear that the king of the Hindu gods, Indra, bestowed upon the hero of charity Karna. Naturally, this spear was not in Gilgamesh's gate of Babylon as it had never been used before and therefore was not recognized for use in legends. However, Gilgamesh had gotten this spear from the system. Everyone, when they saw the spear, their eyes widened as they felt the divine power present in it. Gilgamesh summoned his summoning card and placed it on the spear. Do you wish to use Vasaka Shakti, O son, abide in death as a catalyst? Gilgamesh nodded and a large explosion appeared in front of him. When the dust subsided, a being was revealed. He was young with long tousled white hair that almost looks transparent, his gaze is sharp as a steel blade with the red stone buried in his chest, projecting a captivating glow. What is more eye-catching than anything else is the set of golden armor he has fused with, giving off a divine glow. Although each part is considered beautiful on its own, once combined, they exude far more ferocity than attractiveness. Gilgamesh instantly recognized who it was. It was Karna, the son of the sun god Surya, the invulnerable hero of the Indian epic Mahabharata, as a hero of the losing side. The central conflict of the Mahabharata is the war for influence between the Pandava royal family and the Kaurava royal family. Karna became famous as a rival of Arjuna, the great hero of Hindu mythology. I have come in response to your call. Servant of the Lancer class, I am Karna, son of the sun god Surya, Karna said as he opened his eyes and looked at everyone. Are you my master? Gilgamesh could only smile at that. Unknown location. Arthur and Ellie Faye scoured the entire area they thought Excalibur ruler would be in, but he couldn't find it in the end. Searching several ruins, they couldn't find it, and eventually they left the ruins, finding themselves on a grassy hill with nothing for miles but grass. Arthur looked up with a complex expression, while Ellie Faye tilted his head. Ani-sama, what are we going to do now? Should we accept Cao-Sama's offer to join the heroic faction? Maybe they can help us find the Excalibur ruler. At the question, Arthur frowned. Although I have an inclination to fight that Siegfried, and also Cao, I can sense the evil intentions within them. I'm not sure I'd like you to be in that kind of world. Ellie Faye placed his hand on his chest. Ani-sama, I know you are worried about me, but I would go anywhere you go. Even if it is to the heroic faction. Wouldn't you rather go home, Ellie Faye? Staying with me will be dangerous. You followed me and I wasn't sure about it then, even now I worry about you. Ellie Faye was moved by what he said, it really seemed like she was being treated with kindness. I know you care about me. I care about you too. If something happened to you, then I wouldn't know what I would do. I would just... He paused as he felt a change in the atmosphere. Ellie Faye, come here. Ellie Faye did just that when a young woman stepped forward. She was dressed in purple Lolita Gothic clothing, with narrow eyes and thin lips. Several ribbons adorned her hair, which was a short style, stopping just above her chin. A magical aura surrounded her form, as her eyes landed on Arthur and Ellie Faye. Who are you? Arthur demanded, with the woman shaking a finger. You should introduce yourself first. Seriously, are you a man with manners? Arthur did not look amused, pulling out his king's sacred sword. Well, I'll introduce myself then. My name is Walburga, it's a pleasure to meet you. Walburga? Ellie Faye murmured, the woman before her gave a wink. That's right, dear. Perhaps you have heard of me. Walburga. I have heard your name in magicians' circles, you are very skilled. Arthur paid attention to this, for Walburga showed a cute, but also serious, expression on her face. Wow, it seems my reputation follows me. So, Walburga, what exactly do you want? Walburga's fingers point to Arthur, then to his sacred sword of the king, Caliban. It's a beautiful blade. It's special too, there's nothing like it. Naturally, it is unique. But why are you interested in it? I won't hand it over if you intend to do anything. Walburga raised her hands to the sky. No, no. Don't attack. I came here to offer you a position within a group that is forming, that's all. Ellie Faye raised an eyebrow in concern. What kind of group? Is it like the hero factions? Hero faction? A bunch of people who want to prove that humans are superior. Well, I also think that humans are well placed in the hierarchy. But I also believe that the bad intentions of humans can cause a lot of unnecessary trouble. So why don't you come over to our side? You haven't given me any details on your side. Walburga laughed and snapped her fingers, summoning documents into her hand. She tossed a stack of documents to Arthur. Read them. After all, I am only the messenger. We'll be back in a day or two. If you want to join, great. And if we don't? Arthur demanded of Walburga, who smiled mischievously. Ellie Fei didn't like the way Walburga was looking at them that way. You won't have to find out if you agree. Arthur didn't like the way she said that. It sounded rather threatening. Walburga turned around and nodded without looking at them. Well, goodbye for now, everyone. With a small nod, she disappeared in a magical circle that surprised Ellie Fei. Ellie Fei turned to her older brother, looking curiously at the documents he had. Oni-sama. What was that really? Arthur wasn't so sure either. Whatever it is, I'll read it and see what they're talking about. I wonder what group she is in. I don't know what that group is, which is problematic. It makes sense that they are interested in the sword of the Sacred King. It is a unique blade that can fight against demons and other creatures of darkness. Maybe they have a demon they can't take down and desire my blade. Or maybe it is something more sinister. But to approach me so casually, that Walburga must have an arrogant or confident attitude. From the way she spoke, I couldn't tell. But I felt as if she liked to play with people. Ellie Fei could understand that. She also wondered what would happen next. Whatever it was, she had a bad feeling that Walburga was just part of something much bigger. With Gilgamesh. Currently everyone in Gilgamesh's group and himself were standing in front of Kanra, who was staring at him. Karna was looking at them and seemed to analyze each of them as if looking into their souls. Gilgamesh was sure that Karna was using his discernment of the poor skill. This skill allows the vision to see through the character and attribute of the opponent. He will not be fooled by excuses and deception of words. It expresses the power to understand the true nature of the opponent possessed by Karna, who was blessed with the opportunity to inquire into the life and worth of the weak because he was someone without a single relative. After a while Karna asked again. Are you my master? Asked Karna with no emotion in his voice. Gilgamesh smiled. Yes. I am Gilgamesh, said the King of Heroes. Karna looked momentarily surprised. Gilgamesh, the King of Heroes, the world's oldest hero who collected all the world's treasures, a Sumerian demigod. Are you him? Asks Karna. Gilgamesh shows no surprise as Karna is connected to the throne of heroes and can pick up any information about heroes. Yes and no, I am not him, but I am a descendant of him, replied Gilgamesh. So where are we, master? I don't sense the Grail and I see more servants behind you, said Karna as he noticed Enkiju, Arturia, and Mordred. Gilgamesh smiled. This is going to be a long explanation, speaks Gilgamesh before he begins to tell all. Some time later. Currently Gilgamesh and his group together with Karna were walking towards the basement of the house. Gilgamesh's house had several secret underground floors where Gilgamesh kept some of his magic experiments. Gilgamesh had spent the last hour explaining the whole history of the supernatural world to Karna, who was surprised. Of all the things Karna would expect, this was surely not one of them. Another world? A world where the age of the gods still exists? This was totally unbelievable. The only things Karna had asked Gilgamesh was about what happened to his version of this world. Gilgamesh answered that after his death Karna became one with his father Surya, unlike Ajurna who became a god alongside his father Indra. So Karna no longer existed in this world. Currently everyone was in the dungeon, which was a large green plain with mountains in the background. Everyone stood there while staring at Gilgamesh with doubt. Karna, I would like to challenge you to a battle, said Gilgamesh to everyone's surprise. The whole group of Gilgamesh stared at this perplexed while Enkiju laughed nervously. His friend only thinks about battles. The only thing Karna did was raise an eyebrow. Why is that, master? Asks Karna. You and I can sit and talk for hours and hours and then we will understand each other a little. But before I am a hero, I am a warrior, and I don't think there is any better way for us to understand each other than by exchanging blades, said Gilgamesh smiling. Gilgamesh admits that he may have picked up some of Sarayorg's quirks from the times they met and fought amicably. And also this is a good way for Gilgamesh to test some of his new skills. Karna looked around for a while before speaking. Then I accept, not as a heroic spirit, but as a warrior, Karna said with a slight smile. The whole group of Gilgamesh sighed, knowing that they are both battle maniacs, except Mordred, who was looking forward to the battle. They both went to the edges of the battlefield and faced each other. How should we fight, master? Asked Karna. Karna realized that unlike all his summons from the past, in this one he was in his prime. Karna was a high-level heroic spirit, able to rival the original Gilgamesh. However, all his abilities had a high magical cost and not even high-level magicians were able to maintain him. Fortunately for Karna, his current master is able to provide as much magical energy as Karna needs, so he can draw upon all his power. A good example is that if it were another master, Karna would not be able to keep his mana buster for more than 10 seconds, but thanks to all the magical energy provided by Gilgamesh he could keep it as long as he wanted. Currently Karna was already using 2 of his noble phantasms. One of them is Kavaka and Kundala, the sun, become an armor. It is a powerful noble phantasm of the defensive type that emits the glow of the sun itself. Because the light itself has been formed, it is difficult for even the gods to destroy. It is as thick as it looks, an invincible armor that protects against all damage, physical or conceptual. While it is active, all damage inflicted on Karna will be reduced to 1/10 of its original value. He can fight others without worry, as his attacks are 90% nullified, reducing even powerful blows to minor scratches that can be healed in the middle of battle. Although it can protect against any physical attack from the outside, attacks within it are an exception. It is a mighty noble phantasm of the continuously active type, so it greatly increases its magic energy maintenance cost. The other is Vasaka Shakti, the spear he was gifted by the god Indra. Karna wondered if he should go to the maximum, as he did not want to hurt his master. No need to worry, you can come with everything, Gilgamesh said smiling. Karna clenched his spear before pointing it at Gilgamesh as his own body was immersed in divine flames. Very well. I am no longer seeing you as my master, but as a warrior, a hero, Karna said as he looked at Gilgamesh. I am Karna, son of the sun god, if you do not fear my spear, attack me. Gilgamesh smiled at this and a golden portal appeared beside him and out came a weapon. Its color is golden, its length is 2 meters. Few emerald green jewel ornaments of beauty adorning several of them part. The spear crafted so beautifully that even the gods will approve of it and would feel honored to wield such a masterpiece. It was a spear that pierced the world from the beginning to the end of time. A spear that when thrown would never miss its target. It is a spear wielded by the chief god of the Norse, Odin's spear, Gungnir. I am Gilgamesh, the descendant of the king of heroes, if you do not fear my power, attack, said Gilgamesh smiling. They both stared at each other for a moment before attacking. Both, at the same time, planted their feet on the ground, making the whole ground crack and fired at each other. They both crashed into the battlefield, causing the entire surrounding ground to crack and flames and lightning to fly everywhere. The pressure of the blows sent them backwards, although Karna, who was extremely surprised by the power of his master. Quickly they both fired at each other. Naturally all of Karna's blows would be impossible to deflect due to such experience and mastery he had. Karna moved with dexterity and supernatural mastery, it would be impossible to fully receive the constant attacks of a spearman who has entered so far into the domain of the gods. However, everything changes if the opponent also entered the domain of the gods and moved with the same technique and mastery. His spears roared as they released flames and lightning, they split the air as they moved at blinding speeds, all the earth around them was destroyed by the pressure exerted by his powers, and each strike was like a cannon shot, launching noisy bursts. His transcendental abilities and mastery with his spears made the world itself vibrate. With one thrust Karna threw Gilgamesh backwards, causing the king of heroes to skid. In an instant Karna traversed the entire distance between them and swung his spear from bottom to top. O Agni, spoke Karna as he summoned his mana buster. Divine flames arose from his weapon as he summoned his power as the son of the sun god. Gilgamesh was undeterred and swung Gungnir against Karna. Odin's spear was immersed in lightning and lightning that covered it to increase its power. Further increasing the power of his spear, Gilgamesh caused a metallic black glow to cover the entire spear as he activated his Busashoku Haki to increase his attack and defense. When the spears clashed, the whole earth shattered and the world seemed to vibrate with his power. In a quick demonstration of experience and technique, Karna throws Gilgamesh into the air. Gilgamesh decided to use one of his new abilities, the unlimited weapons works. Gilgamesh not only had all this skill, he also had all the knowledge about weapons to track. Gilgamesh had also bought all of Emiya and Shiro Emiya's knowledge of tracking and all the weapons he ever tracked, thus getting a complete arsenal instantly. Lifting one of his hands, a flash of blue flame appeared in his palm. The blue flame glowed and danced in his palm like a ballerina showing off her beauty to the audience, then the blue flame changed. It let out sounds of brightness before it turned red and changed again, the color getting darker until the red became red. The crimson flame expanded upwards, lines and webs began to form around it as it began to take shape. It was supposed to be a sword, but it changed. The edge was twisted, bent and coiled into a spiral, rather than straight. It looks more like a drill stuck to the hilt of the sword than a sword. But even if it changed, but the power it held was still the same. So he lifted the twisted blade and put it in his bow, the bow he made himself. Emiya in his life had made a bow, a special black bow that was capable of casting noble phantoms. His bow, better. In his lifetime, Emiya made the bow for limited material, since he lives in the world where the age of the gods is over and magecraft was dying, a rare artifact even close to no longer existing. But not here. The red bow was made from the scales and bone structure of the most powerful type of dragon, surpassed only by the dragon god and the true dragon. Making this bow should be impossible, seeing that the dragon is already dead and sealed. Even if you find the host of its power, you still won't be able to produce the near original, since Juggernaut Drive didn't transform you into the rebirth of that dragon, it just grants you the same amount of massive power. But Gilgamesh was different. He is the host. He had seen and met the dragon directly, even talked to it and touched its scales. He even asked the dragon to reveal its fangs and sharp claws. So he was able to forge this bow, the bow that's superior to the one Emiya created. It is not heavier, it is lighter, but it is more durable, easier to use and stronger. It was more than enough to shoot the noble phantom that could not be carried by human. A red ray flickered around the sword, its enormous power barely contained, it was like a caged dragon roaring with rage, demanding to be unleashed upon its enemy. The moment he drew the sword, a large amount of blue prana began to pour from his body, all of which formed into a blue mist that began to envelop the sword covered by a red ray. My core is twisted to madness. Kalidbulg.